Top 1. The Forgotten Empire of Tartaria. The Forgotten Empire of Tartaria remains a profound historical enigma. In 1764, an Austrian military cartographer named Joseph von Rayleigh published a meticulously detailed map of Eurasia. It included cities, rivers, mountain ranges, and a vast territory labeled Grand Tartary, stretching from the Caspian Sea all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This was not an isolated anomaly. For over 2 centuries, maps from Paris, London, Moscow, and even early American atlases depicted a mysterious superstate called Tartaria. But by the mid-1800s, the name vanished from academic texts, encyclopedias, and history books, as if it had never existed. The disappearance of an entire geopolitical entity from mainstream history is not something that typically goes unnoticed. Yet, Tartaria slipped silently into the void. Today, only fragments remain on the brown pages of forgotten atlases, etched into crumbling stone facades or hidden deep in the archives of imperial libraries. No mainstream historian refers to it. No university teaches it. The question is not whether Tartaria existed, but rather why it was erased so completely. Tartaria's alleged territory was colossal, spanning nearly 4,000 miles across what is now Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and parts of China. Some maps from the 1700s even labeled it as independent Tartary, suggesting autonomy from Russian imperial rule. Several cities are marked as Tartarian capitals with strange names that do not appear in any Slavic, Turkic, or Chinese linguistic lineage. These names echo like ghosts, hinting at an identity completely distinct from its neighboring cultures. Architectural anomalies compound the mystery. Scattered across Eastern Europe and Central Asia are monumental buildings, enormous stone halls, star-shaped fortresses, and onion dome towers constructed with techniques inconsistent with the official timeline of the region's development. Many of these structures display signs of advanced masonry, symmetrical magnetism, and precise geometrical alignment with astronomical bodies. Some researchers argue that these buildings were not built by the modern nations that now occupy the land, but were instead remnants of a lost civilization, one with knowledge of acoustics, resonance, and geometry beyond their era. The suppression of Tartaria is not without evidence. In the mid-19th century, as the Russian Empire consolidated its control over Central Asia, new maps began to omit the term. Textbooks published in Moscow and St. Petersburg in the 1860s made no mention of Tartaria. The British Royal Geographical Society released a statement in 1875 declaring Tartaria a mythical designation, despite acknowledging its presence in prior documentation. Maps showing the region as Tartary were systematically reprinted, relabeled, or destroyed. Even in the United States, school atlases that had once listed Tartaria as a neighboring land to China and Russia suddenly redacted the term. Photographic records and early stereographs of Tartarian cities were quietly reclassified. Stone monuments were attributed to later empires with no construction logs or blueprints. Entire archives of architectural drawings from the 17th and 18th centuries were locked away in sealed vaults of national libraries. Some claim the erasure was deliberate, not merely a geopolitical rebranding, but a full-scale redaction of an inconvenient narrative. If Tartaria did exist as more than a cartographic error, the implications are staggering. It would suggest that a highly organized civilization once dominated much of Eurasia, possibly possessing technological and cultural sophistication that rivaled or surpassed that of its neighbors. Its erasure could represent the largest historical deletion in modern times, and if such a civilization was indeed wiped from collective memory, the next question is more disturbing. Who had the power to delete it, and why? Top 2. The sunken ruins of Fuxian Lake. The sunken ruins of Fuxian Lake present a mystery that defies conventional explanation. In 2001, while surveying the bottom of Fuxian Lake in Yunnan Province, China, a team of divers from the Chinese Underwater Exploration Institute encountered something incredible. At a depth of over 100 feet, nestled beneath layers of freshwater silt, they discovered massive stone structures arranged in a grid-like pattern, featuring steps, platforms, and walls extending hundreds of feet. What they found looked nothing like a natural formation. It resembled a city, one that had been submerged for thousands of years and forgotten by all known historical records. Covering more than 1.2 square miles, the underwater ruins displayed clear signs of intentional design. One central structure rose nearly 40 feet high, with a flat top and symmetrical sloping sides resembling a step pyramid. The stones used were up to 15 feet long and weighed several tons each, laid in tightly packed sequences without visible mortar. Divers described intricate carvings on certain slabs, including symbols never before catalogued in Chinese archaeology. Some bore markings that suggested celestial alignment, while others appeared ornamental, hinting at a cultural or ceremonial function. Carbon dating could not be applied directly to the stone. However, sedimentary analysis placed the submersion event at over 1,800 years ago, long before the region saw advanced urban development. The style and scale of the architecture did not match anything from known Chinese dynasties. In fact, the ruins seem to predate even the Dian Kingdom, a Bronze Age civilization that once flourished near the lake, but left no record of building anything so colossal. The official response was swift and subdued. State-run media initially reported the findings with cautious excitement, dubbing it China's Atlantis. But shortly afterward, coverage dwindled. Access to the site was restricted under the pretext of ecological protection. Foreign researchers were denied diving permits. A documentary produced by the Yunnan Provincial Television Network was never aired beyond the region. When asked for updates, the Underwater Exploration Institute declined to comment. A handful of researchers who had visited the site were later reassigned to unrelated geological projects. A private academic paper proposing that the ruins were over 5,000 years old, potentially older than Egypt's pyramids, was quietly removed from public access. No photographs of the carvings have since been released to the public. The existence of the structures is not denied, but their nature is officially labeled undetermined. What makes Fuxian Lake especially intriguing is the absence of historical narrative. No Chinese myths, legends, or records mention a city in that location. The Han Dynasty, which ruled the area during the lake's proposed submersion, kept exhaustive chronicles of settlements and infrastructure. Yet, there is nothing about a lakeside metropolis, let alone one of such staggering scale and precision. This raises troubling possibilities. Was the city from an undocumented civilization? Was it purposely wiped from local records? Or worse, was it never meant to be discovered at all? In the decades since the discovery, satellite imaging of Fuxian Lake has shown faint outlines of square geometries beneath the surface. However, current policy prohibits any form of excavation or disturbance. The ruins remain underwater, untouched, and officially unexplored. If the structures beneath Fuxian Lake truly represent a lost civilization, then a vast chapter of East Asian history has been buried, not just by sediment, but perhaps by intention. Top 3. The Hidden City of Nan Madol. The hidden city of Nan Madol is a place where logic seems to fail. In 1928, French ethnologist Paul Hambroch arrived at the remote island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, drawn by tales of an ancient city built on the ocean itself. What he encountered defied not only logic, but the known capabilities of the island's indigenous population. Rising out of the shallow waters off Pohnpei's southeastern coast was a labyrinth of islets, canals, and monolithic ruins, a massive stone complex stretching nearly 1.5 square miles, constructed entirely on a coral reef. This was Nan Madol, a city built on the sea, and to this day, no one can explain how it came to be. Constructed from more than 250 million pounds of prismatic basalt columns, many weighing over 10 tons and stretching 15 feet in length, the city consists of 92 artificial islets connected by narrow canals. These blocks were stacked like Lincoln logs to form temples, tombs, and walls over 25 feet high. No quarries exist on the island capable of producing such stone. Even more disturbing, the nearest source of these hexagonal basalt columns lies over 25 miles away across dense jungle and steep volcanic terrain. There are no roads, no carts, and no draft animals. Oral histories provide no method for how the stones were transported. Locals tell of flying stones said to have levitated into place under the guidance of sorcerers from a distant land. While such tales are dismissed by mainstream archaeology, no mechanical explanation has been proposed. Modern engineers who have visited the site admit that even with today's equipment, recreating Nan Madol on a reef would be a monumental logistical challenge, not to mention a hazardous one. What is known of the builders comes from legend, the Saudeleurs, a mysterious dynasty believed to have arrived suddenly around the 12th century, and just as suddenly vanished by the 16th. Their rule was described as absolute and alien. They were said to have skin lighter than the islanders, and their arrival marked a radical change in religious and political structure. Yet no written language, tools, or human remains have ever been definitively linked to the Saudeleur era. The site's deeper levels, which lie submerged beneath rising sea levels, remain unexplored due to strong tides and local taboos. Efforts to conduct sustained archaeological research have faced numerous obstacles. Equipment malfunctions, storms, and sudden illness have plagued multiple expeditions. Locals warn that the city is cursed. They refuse to stay near it after sunset. Even the name Nan Madol, meaning spaces between, evokes an unsettling ambiguity, as if the city exists in a liminal space between worlds. There are signs of suppression, too. In the 1970s, Japanese and American teams attempted to initiate joint digs at the deeper layers of the site, but permits were revoked without explanation. UNESCO lists Nan Madol as a World Heritage Site in danger, yet official reports on its origins remain inconclusive, locked in bureaucratic limbo. Satellite scans show symmetrical extensions beneath the water, suggesting that what is visible today may only be a fragment of a much larger complex. If Nan Madol is indeed the remnant of a lost civilization, then its existence rewrites the history of Oceania, a region not known for megalithic construction. It would suggest that an advanced culture once sailed to this remote corner of the Pacific and left behind a city no modern island nation could replicate. And if such a civilization built a city on the ocean and then disappeared without a trace, the real question may be, what else have they left behind? And where? Top 4. The Lost Kingdom of Ubar. The Lost Kingdom of Ubar was long considered a myth until modern technology intervened. In 1992, a NASA satellite equipped with ground-penetrating radar detected unusual linear formations beneath the sands of Oman's Rub al Khali, the largest continuous sand desert in the world. These formations, barely visible to the naked eye, resembled ancient trade routes radiating outward from a single point, a location long suspected to be the site of the legendary city of Ubar. Within months, an excavation team led by archaeologist Nicholas Clapp arrived on site. What they uncovered would challenge the boundaries between myth and history. Local Bedouin tribes had long spoken of Iram, the city of pillars, a place mentioned in the Quran as a prosperous but sinful civilization destroyed by divine wrath. Western explorers from the 19th century dismissed it as folklore, a desert mirage passed down through generations. But beneath the shifting dunes, the team unearthed collapsed walls, ancient well systems, and 8 limestone pillars, each rising over 30 feet tall. They found pottery shards, incense burners, and fragments of script that predated Islamic Arabia. This was not a myth. This was a city, and it had been buried for over 1,000 years. Archaeological analysis suggested Ubar thrived between 2800 BCE and 300 CE, serving as a crucial hub along the incense route that linked the Arabian Peninsula to the Mediterranean. At its height, Ubar likely controlled the regional trade in frankincense, a resin once more valuable than gold. The wealth it generated allowed for construction on a scale previously thought impossible in pre-Islamic Arabia. But something had gone catastrophically wrong. The city appeared to have collapsed into a massive limestone cavern beneath its foundations, a geological sinkhole triggered by centuries of overuse of its freshwater aquifers. Yet the sinkhole was curiously symmetrical, almost architectural in form. It resembled a hidden vault or an engineered space with curved walls and segmented chambers. No one could determine whether it was a natural occurrence or an artificial substructure. The find was briefly hailed as one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the century. Media dubbed it Atlantis of the Sands. But soon after, interest waned. The excavation site was closed to foreign researchers. Satellite images of the region became harder to access. NASA's data was reclassified and removed from public databases. Reports from the excavation team were redacted in subsequent academic publications. Nicholas Clapp himself noted that his follow-up research proposals were repeatedly blocked, often without explanation. What followed was a rapid descent into obscurity. Museums that had agreed to display Ubar artifacts returned them to Omani authorities. Theories suggesting the city might be older than Sumer or tied to unknown cultural groups were dismissed as pseudoscience. The limestone sinkhole was quietly fenced off and designated a danger zone. Yet, the evidence remains. A lost kingdom with advanced irrigation, monumental architecture, and cultural practices unlike any documented Arab civilization had existed and disappeared. The Quran's reference to a city, the like of which was never created in the lands, may not have been poetic hyperbole. Ubar had power, wealth, and influence, and then it was swallowed by the earth. If a civilization of such scale could fall through the cracks of history, forgotten by textbooks and covered by desert, how many more remain buried beneath our feet? Top 5. The submerged city of Dwarka. The submerged city of Dwarka challenges the very timeline of human civilization. In 2001, the National Institute of Ocean Technology of India was conducting sonar mapping along the Gulf of Khambat, off the western coast of India, when their instruments picked up something impossible. Beneath 120 feet of water, spanning nearly 5 square miles, lay symmetrical stone structures, grid-like street patterns, and geometric foundations, unmistakably the remains of a sunken city. Divers sent to investigate retrieved carved stone blocks, fossilized wood, and shards of pottery. What they had discovered sent shockwaves through both the scientific and religious communities of India. The ruins of a city that appeared to match the description of Dwarka, the ancient capital of Lord Krishna, long believed to be a myth. According to the Mahabharata, one of India's oldest epics, Dwarka was a city built from crystal and gold, ruled by Krishna, and protected by divine forces. It was said to have been destroyed by the sea after Krishna's death, sinking beneath the waves in a great cataclysm. For centuries, mainstream historians dismissed Dwarka as a symbolic city, a metaphor for moral decline. But the sonar images told another story. Recovered samples from the site were carbon-dated by the National Geophysical Research Institute and returned a shocking result: between 7,500 and 9,000 years old. This timeline predates the Harappan civilization, India's first acknowledged urban culture, by over 4,000 years. If the dates were accurate, the underwater city could represent the oldest known civilization on Earth. The site's structures include long walls, straight roads, right-angled turns, and what appears to be a large step tank or reservoir, suggesting sophisticated urban planning. Some artifacts bear markings akin to early scripts, possibly predating the Indus Valley script itself. Fossilized bones of humans and animals were found near remnants of what might have been dwellings. And yet, all of this lies submerged under thick sediment, covered by millennia of ocean currents and time. Despite the monumental nature of the find, the Indian government issued only a brief acknowledgement. Media coverage was brief and vague. No significant excavation was funded, and foreign academic involvement was quietly discouraged. The official stance remains cautious. The site is listed as geologically interesting, but not formally identified as Dwarka. Independent researchers who attempted to correlate the Mahabharata's descriptions with sonar images found uncanny similarities, but their work was relegated to niche publications. Photographic and video documentation from the initial dive team was never released in full. Several researchers involved in the discovery later claimed they were pressured to refrain from discussing the implications in public forums. Some expressed frustration at the lack of institutional support to further investigate a site that could rewrite the prehistory of South Asia. The silence surrounding the underwater city of Dwarka is louder than any declaration. It suggests not merely academic caution, but perhaps a reluctance to acknowledge a historical reality that could undermine established chronologies not just in India, but globally. If Dwarka was real, and it existed thousands of years before known civilizations, then it demands a radical reassessment of human history. It raises a darker question. How many other cities have been lost to the sea, erased not only by water, but by the fear of what they might reveal? Top 6. The builders of Göbekli Tepe. The builders of Göbekli Tepe left behind a site that shatters our understanding of the past. In 1994, a Kurdish shepherd wandering the barren hills of southeastern Turkey stumbled upon a slab of stone protruding from the dry earth. What archaeologists would uncover beneath that stone would not only rewrite history, it would obliterate the very timeline of civilization. Buried under thousands of tons of sediment was Göbekli Tepe, a sprawling megalithic complex composed of over 200 massive stone pillars, some towering over 18 feet and weighing up to 20 tons. The site was deliberately entombed in antiquity, hidden for over 10,000 years, and yet its complexity suggests the work of minds far ahead of their time. The pillars are arranged in circular enclosures with astonishingly precise reliefs of animals: scorpions, snakes, lions, vultures, species that held symbolic power for early humans. But these were not simple tribal carvings. The level of artistic and engineering precision would be impressive even by Bronze Age standards. Some of the stone surfaces are polished to a degree that suggests the use of tools not yet known to have existed during the pre-pottery Neolithic period. And that is where the real mystery begins. Radiocarbon dating of the site places its construction at circa 9600 BCE, nearly 7,000 years older than the Egyptian pyramids and older even than the invention of agriculture. According to mainstream history, the people of that time were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers with no permanent settlements. let alone knowledge of megalithic engineering. Göbekli Tepe shouldn't exist, but it does. No one knows who built it or why. There are no human remains buried there, no signs of domestic life, no tools left behind, only the stones and their silent, symmetrical order. Some archaeologists theorize that Göbekli Tepe was a religious center, possibly the first known temple complex in human history. Others suggest it was a celestial observatory, with the alignment of certain pillars matching constellations that would have appeared in the sky over 12,000 years ago. But the most disturbing detail is not its age. It's the fact that the entire complex was deliberately buried. Layer after layer of debris was used to fill in the enclosures, entombing the site as if to hide it forever. This was not the slow burial of time or nature. It was intentional. Whoever built Göbekli Tepe did not want it to be found. Excavation efforts have been cautious, almost restrained. Despite the vastness of the site, less than 10% has been uncovered to date. Turkish authorities have restricted access to certain sectors, citing preservation concerns. High-resolution satellite images of the surrounding hills have shown more stone signatures underground, suggesting that Göbekli Tepe might be only one node in a much larger network of prehistoric structures. A network still buried and off-limits to investigation. Göbekli Tepe is rarely mentioned in school books, and even academic texts refer to it with reluctance. Its very existence challenges the core assumptions of human development: that agriculture came before architecture, that cities followed farming, and that civilization emerged gradually. But here lies proof of monumental construction before any of that began. If humanity was capable of such sophistication so early, then what exactly did we forget? What knowledge was lost when Göbekli Tepe was buried? And who wanted it buried in the first place? Top 7. The Megaliths of Baalbek. The megaliths of Baalbek stand as one of the most baffling engineering enigmas in human history. In the Bekaa Valley of modern-day Lebanon, perched on a raised platform overlooking a long-forgotten trade route, stands the Roman temple complex of Baalbek. It is impressive in its own right, but beneath its stone columns and classical ruins lies something far older and far more disturbing. Massive megalithic blocks, some weighing more than 1,200 tons, form the foundation of the temple platform. One in particular, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, measures over 70 feet long and is estimated to weigh 3,500 tons. For comparison, that's equivalent to the weight of over 3 fully loaded Boeing 747s, carved, transported, and positioned with such precision that even modern cranes would struggle to move them. The official narrative holds that the Romans built the temple in the 1st century CE using these blocks as the foundation, but Roman records contain no mention of transporting or carving such stones. In fact, no ancient text mentions how the blocks arrived at the site. They appear as if they were always there, silent, immovable, and inexplicable. Geological studies confirm that the stones were quarried nearby, but moving them over uneven terrain without modern machinery remains an unsolved problem. Some researchers have suggested a system of rollers or sleds, but calculations show that friction alone would have rendered such methods impossible. Others point to levitation theories involving lost acoustic or vibrational technologies, ideas met with derision by academic circles, yet still without an alternative explanation. The architectural mismatch is glaring. The megalithic base bears no stylistic resemblance to Roman design. The stones beneath are tightly fitted, some showing signs of erosion inconsistent with the structures built atop them. This suggests two different construction epochs, one forgotten, the other superimposed. In essence, the Romans may have simply built their temple on top of an existing, much older platform whose builders are unknown. efforts to explore the substructure have been met with bureaucratic roadblocks. In the 1990s, a joint German-Lebanese archaeological team attempted to excavate deeper beneath the platform, but were halted by unexplained revocations of permits. The deepest chambers, thought to contain additional stones or perhaps access to lower levels, remain sealed. Government reports state the area is geologically unstable, though no independent geological survey has ever been published. In 2014, a team from the German Archaeological Institute announced they had found another block nearby, even larger than the stone of the pregnant woman. It remains in situ, partially buried. But beyond that announcement, there has been no major initiative to extract or study it further. The deeper issue is not just engineering, it's memory. There is no historical account of the builders of Baalbek's foundation. No names, no blueprints, no myths. A structure this large, one that would have taken hundreds of skilled workers years of labor and resources on a national scale, has left no trace in the historical record. If Baalbek's base was not Roman, then who built it? And if its purpose was something other than worship, what kind of force or knowledge required such an indestructible platform? Top 8. The underground cities of Derinkuyu. The underground cities of Derinkuyu reveal a world hidden beneath our feet. In 1963, a man in the Nevşehir province of Turkey was renovating his basement when his sledgehammer punched through a wall, revealing a hidden tunnel behind it. That passageway led not to a forgotten storeroom or an old cellar, but to an entire underground city. The accidental discovery of Derinkuyu revealed a sprawling subterranean complex descending over 280 feet beneath the surface, with at least 18 levels, more than 600 entrances, and the capacity to house over 20,000 people. But the question remains, who built it and why? The city contains living quarters, food storage, ventilation shafts, wine presses, stables, and even a school. Massive circular stone doors, each weighing over 1,000 pounds, could be rolled into place to seal off corridors. Sophisticated air circulation systems supplied breathable air even at the deepest levels, and wells were dug to access fresh water without exposing inhabitants to the surface. Everything about Derinkuyu suggests it was not a crude refuge, but a carefully engineered, long-term living environment designed for survival. There is no record in Ottoman, Byzantine, or even early Christian history that details the construction of Derinkuyu. Local folklore attributes the underground cities of Cappadocia to supernatural beings or ancient giants. The oldest known mention of underground refugees in the region comes from the Greek historian Xenophon, writing in the 4th century BCE, who vaguely referred to people who lived underground in Anatolia, but that's centuries after the structures were likely built. Archaeologists have speculated that Derinkuyu was constructed during the Hittite Empire around 1500 BCE to escape invasion, but the scale and complexity of the tunnels far exceed anything else from that period. Some parts of the city appear to predate Hittite construction techniques altogether. Furthermore, the effort required to remove and transport millions of tons of volcanic tuff, a lightweight but dense rock, would have demanded thousands of workers, advanced planning, and years of labor. Yet, no inscriptions, no tools, and no depictions of the builders have ever been found. There are signs the site may have been reused and expanded over time, but its core structure seems to have been built in a single massive phase, a feat of organization not accounted for by any regional culture at the time. More troubling, it appears Derinkuyu was not unique. Satellite scans and local reports suggest hundreds of similar subterranean structures lie beneath Cappadocia, many still sealed or unexplored. Research into the deeper levels of Derinkuyu has been restricted in recent years. Turkish authorities cite concerns over structural safety and preservation, but several archaeologists claimed they were denied access after requesting to dig beneath level 18. High-resolution mapping projects were abruptly suspended without public explanation. Some underground passages known to connect to other cities, such as Kaymakli, have been bricked over or blocked. Why would ancient people undertake the Herculean task of constructing entire cities underground? Theories range from protection against war to shelter from volcanic ash or ice age temperatures. But one hypothesis stands apart. Derinkuyu was a refuge not from nature or man, but from something unseen. The absence of external-facing defenses supports the idea that the threat came from above. Locals still whisper of entities descending from the sky, driving people to flee into the earth itself. If that sounds implausible, consider this. Civilizations are known to build upward to honor the divine. What does it mean when a people builds downward into darkness and never comes back up? Top 9. The disappearance of the Olmecs. The disappearance of the Olmecs remains one of the great mysteries of the Americas. In the jungles of southern Mexico, archaeologists in the 19th century stumbled upon something completely out of place. Colossal stone heads, each standing over 7 feet tall and weighing up to 40 tons, carved with uncanny precision and unmistakable human features. These monoliths were unlike anything in Mesoamerican archaeology. They did not belong to the Maya nor the Aztecs. They belonged to a forgotten people, the Olmecs, a civilization so ancient and enigmatic that their origins remain a complete mystery. And perhaps more disturbingly, so does their disappearance. Flourishing between 1500 and 400 BCE, the Olmecs are considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica. They are credited with developing the region's earliest writing system, calendar, and even the concept of zero, elements later adopted by the Maya and other civilizations. Their art, religion, and urban planning reveal a complexity that contradicts their absence from local oral history. Despite their monumental influence, the Olmecs are almost never mentioned in the myths or traditions of the cultures that followed them. It's as if they were erased, not only from the land, but from memory. At sites like San Lorenzo and La Venta, entire city complexes were discovered buried beneath thick jungle layers containing pyramids, ceremonial platforms, aqueduct systems, and intricate drainage networks. Yet unlike the Maya or Inca, the Olmecs left behind no known texts explaining who they were or why they vanished. Their script remains undeciphered, and their language is unknown. Even their ethnicity is debated. The stone heads, with their helmeted designs and broad facial features, have sparked endless theories, some linking them to African, Asian, or even extraterrestrial origins. But the real mystery lies in how abruptly they disappeared around 400 BCE. Olmec cities were systematically abandoned. There are no signs of war, no epidemics, and no climatic disaster. Some structures were deliberately defaced, others were ritually buried. In several sites, offerings of jade, obsidian, and shell ornaments were placed over demolished temples, as if the civilization itself had chosen to vanish or had been forced to erase its own existence. Attempts to further study the Olmecs have faced quiet resistance. In the 1980s, a Mexican-led team proposed that advanced metallurgy techniques found in isolated Olmec artifacts suggested contact with other continents. Their paper was blocked from publication in leading journals. Museum exhibits describing Olmec achievements are notably sparse, often presented as mere precursors to more legitimate cultures like the Maya. In 2002, a massive stone tablet containing what may have been a detailed Olmec map was mysteriously damaged in storage before it could be translated. Even the term Olmec is a label imposed centuries later by the Aztecs, meaning people of the rubber country. It is not what they called themselves. We don't know their true name, we don't know why they built what they built, and we don't know why they disappeared without leaving behind a legacy in the very cultures they influenced. The silence is deafening. For a civilization so foundational, so sophisticated, and so geographically vast, their erasure is inexplicable, unless it was intentional. If the Olmecs were truly the first great civilization of the Americas, then what force wiped them from the stories that followed? And why has no one been allowed to remember? Top 10. The Mystery of the Anunnaki Cities. The mystery of the Anunnaki cities takes us back to the very dawn of recorded history. In 1849, British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard unearthed the ruins of the ancient city of Nineveh in present-day Iraq. Among the artifacts retrieved was a cache of over 20,000 cuneiform tablets, many of which contained references to the Anunnaki, a group of enigmatic figures described in Sumerian texts as those who came from the heavens. These beings were not portrayed as deities in the traditional sense, but as rulers, engineers, judges, and even miners. They were said to have descended to earth, governed cities, and imparted knowledge to humanity before vanishing without a trace. The cities in which they reigned, Eridu, Nippur, and Uruk, were among the first urban centers on Earth, dating back to 4000 BCE or earlier. What makes these sites extraordinary is not merely their age, but their technological sophistication. Ancient Sumerian tablets detail irrigation systems with sluice gates, levees, and canals engineered with such precision that modern hydrologists have marveled at their efficiency. Star charts recovered from the region show knowledge of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, planets invisible to the naked eye, and only discovered in the modern era with telescopes. And then there are the ziggurats, stepped pyramids aligned with celestial coordinates, constructed from millions of mud bricks and topped with temples said to house communication chambers between Earth and the sky. The most perplexing inscriptions describe sky boats used by the Anunnaki to traverse realms and black-headed people, possibly humans, created or guided to serve them. Mainstream historians have long dismissed these accounts as religious metaphor, cautioning against reading myth as history. But some details resist interpretation. For example, the Sumerian king list, an ancient text found in multiple copies across different cities, records a list of kings who reigned for thousands of years, even tens of thousands, before a great flood reset the world. The list then continues with historically confirmed kings almost seamlessly. Why would scribes embed factual rulers within a chronology of impossible dynasties? Attempts to seriously examine these questions have been quietly discouraged. In 2003, during the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the National Museum in Baghdad, which held a significant portion of the recovered Sumerian tablets, was looted. Among the missing items were the most controversial cuneiform tablets describing the Anunnaki in detail. Several were later recovered, but not all. Some believe these missing pieces may contain more explicit records of non-human contact or technologies lost to time. Satellite imaging of ancient Sumerian city sites has revealed underground chambers and circular depressions, suggesting the presence of tunnels, vaults, or substructures not yet excavated. But many of these sites remain off-limits due to geopolitical instability or unexplained administrative blockage. Projects to scan deeper layers beneath Eridu were abruptly halted in 2015 despite initial funding and interest. Why such resistance to exploring the origins of our first cities? Why are the Anunnaki, beings described not just in Sumer, but also echoed in Babylonian, Assyrian, and Akkadian records, consistently written off as mythology when other ancient figures are granted historical consideration? If the Anunnaki were real, Their disappearance may not have been a matter of death, but of departure. And if they were never truly gods, but something else, something we once knew how to recognize, then perhaps what we call mythology is only the residue of memory. And if those memories were erased or buried, the question remains, who benefits from our forgetting? Across the deserts, beneath the oceans, and buried in layers of forgotten soil, these 10 civilizations offer more than mystery. They offer a mirror. Each ruin, each submerged street, and carved pillar is a reflection of what humanity once was and what it might have been. Not primitive, not linear, but brilliant in ways we're only beginning to recognize. The remnants of Tartaria, the submerged city beneath Fuxian Lake, the precision of Göbekli Tepe, the engineering marvels of Baalbek. These are not just curiosities. They are chapters of human creativity written in stone, water, and silence. They speak of civilizations that measured the stars, understood resonance and material science, and built not for decades, but for millennia. More than lost knowledge, these civilizations embody lost perspectives, alternative ways of organizing life, time, and meaning. They remind us that the modern narrative of progress is not the only one, that there have been other paths, equally profound, that merge myth with engineering, spirit with structure, geometry with ritual, paths we barely remember. The true tragedy is not that these cultures disappeared, but that their insights have not been integrated into how we define ourselves today. Their ruins could have been seeds, launching points for innovation, sustainability, or a deeper relationship with the natural world. Instead, they remain isolated, categorized, and misunderstood. Yet, their presence persists. Their cities still exist. Their mysteries still challenge us. Their questions still echo. They do not demand worship or certainty. They ask for curiosity, for humility, for the courage to admit that we do not yet know the full story of our species. Because if humanity has built like this before, with this precision, this vision, this daring, then the past is not behind us. It is ahead, calling us to rediscover what we once knew and to carry it forward. The ruins do not mourn. They wait. If these stories of lost empires and hidden histories have changed the way you look at the world around you, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are dedicated to unearthing the history that they have tried so hard to bury. Help us plant the seeds for a new understanding of our future. The next great treasure of the past will be revealed soon. Stay curious,